But without further ado, because I have a lot to unpack in a very short period of time, I am going to get started. So you guys are all here to learn more about virtual internships. And this is part of a 3-part webinar series, which is looking to the past, present, and future of virtual internships. And in this one, we're really focusing on our support of 1,000+ students, which happened this summer between May and August. Today, you are supported by myself, Jillian Low, as well as 2 wonderful university partnership managers based in the US, Jessica Rutkowski and Kelen Townsend. Really, what we're discussing today is how in the world from 2018 to 2019, we had roughly 300 participants. And in the summer alone of 2020, we went to 1,015 students, and we're really able to successfully place them, support them, and support their outcomes of skills development and employability. And so one of the crucial things to really understand here is that in that pathway to 1,015 students is that we didn't pivot because of COVID. In 2018, we were really lucky to have leadership that had the foresight that remote work was here to stay, and they started the virtual internship program. This did have year-on-year growth from 2018 to 2019, but of course this final number was very much fueled and spurred by 2020. Our support could really unpack a whole nother webinar on how we built scale around this to meet the needs of 10,015, or how we really utilized and benefited from our university partnership network to get all these students to either pivot from in-person to virtual or re-engage. But really what we're going to unpack today is the data behind the outcomes of the participants and the host companies that were on our summer program. So to really understand the data, I'm going to try to very briefly and basically explain our program as quickly as possible. And so in the virtual internship program, we provide individualized support and guidance. All students are given an assigned program experience manager that they can reach out to day to day with any interventions of the host company or project management or support if necessary. They're also given a dedicated intern coach, providing personal mid and endpoint coaching calls that really look at the big picture, future career pathways, and skills articulation. They're also able to access online programming and events through weekly Google Hangouts and fortnightly employability webinar series that are really focused on remote work themes, as well as access to our online curriculum Career Bridge, which is used for our academic credit and school of record, and all based on the 8 NAES career readiness competencies. They're given access to vetted internship placements around the globe. We have over 3,500 engaged host companies who have been vetted and approved to support remote interns. And students are given the option to choose one of 2 placement tracks, including an international focus, which I'll unpack a little bit more in a couple slides. And finally, they are given project-based internships. So all students are matched to a curated project placement plan that covers remote work skills, tools, as well as the key projects they'll be completing. And they're given access to a weekly feedback loop where we're able to ask the student to reflect on the work they did and note the time and the effort and the skills they gained, the supervisor to reflect on the work they need to do next week, as well as give any feedback or ways to improve. And finally, for the student to give us direct feedback, noting if they're enjoying their internship or if there's issues with communication, meeting, and more, so that we can intervene on their behalf and really navigate the challenges of remote work. Knowing all of this, with the data, our students represent over 106 different universities in that group of 1,015 participants, and our host companies represent over 70 different countries. We also, just noting the data, all internships are a minimum of 120 hours with a maximum of 360 hours. All internships are unpaid, but can be for academic credit, either through us or their home institution. And all data is from participants beginning May 1st through August 31st. Since the start date goes from May to August and not all students have completed, we don't have the full data on the 1,015 students, but I did aim for a minimum of 280 responses for all data that I am projecting out to you. And finally, where does this data come from? For our students, we collect a pre, mid, and post self-assessment. These assessments are all aligned to the NACE 8 career readiness competencies. We ask a series of 3 questions per competency, and we ask the students to complete these prior to their coaching call. So it's really looking at the skills and the reflection thereof. We also have a program, end of program evaluation. This is not only assessing us, virtual internships, and our integrity and support and success of a program, but it also asks some of the students' outcomes and their feelings on remote work and employability. And finally, we have the supervisor evaluations. This is kind of a combination of the assessment and the evaluation, where supervisors are able to assess their students based on the NACE competencies, as well as review their motivations and outcomes of the virtual internship program. Without further ado of all that, what we can take from the data is looking first and foremost at student motivations. Why did they do a remote work experience? And in reviewing over 1,000 applications and looking at the question, why is it important to gain remote work skills in 2020? It's no surprise to anybody around the world that 63% of students noted or reflected that one of the main reasons to gain work experience or remote work experience was because of the COVID-19 situation. I actually thought that number was going to be vastly higher, but 63% really kind of reflected that the pandemic was the driving force behind remote work. But in a really strong second, 37% noted that the current industry and technological trends show that remote work is here to stay. And they recognize that this will continue past 2020, and that 19% noted a need to build remote skills because that was going to be important to increase employment outcomes now and in the future. Surprisingly, 18 and 6% both noted that it was just a given fact that remote work increased productivity and flexibility for employers. Some even noted that it was good for the commute times or the environment, but a lot really focused not on the reason why remote work skills was so important for them, but why it was so important for employers, noting that this importance on employers meant that it was going to be this trend to stay. Somebody who was able to kind of articulate all students' motivations really well was Elizabeth Cohn. So I did just pull her testimonial video real quick so that you can see why she did a virtual internship and how it really does kind of encompass a lot of other students' motivations.
I interned for a company named Kaigen from Japan. I'm a computer engineering major, and I was able to get an embedded systems internship, which is what I was interested in. And the original reason that I applied to virtual internships was because my school actually put out this flyer, had this whole presentation that presented virtual internships as a good opportunity to take what might not have been a great summer, this 2020, and turn it into a chance to still get some professional experience, still learn some technical skills from an internship, and still have something to put on my resume going into the next school year, which is something that was really important to me because despite the fact that I wasn't able to secure a local internship before stuff kind of started going haywire, I still really wanted to have some kind of experience, some kind of job to really feel like I made the most out of my summer despite the world situation.
So a lot of students did note that they wanted to do something in spite of the situation, as well as to show that they had the proactiveness to go above and beyond COVID stopping them and finding alternate ways to get those skills, as well as to get the skill gain for the future. On the flip side, and the interesting side of data as well, is we offer 2 guarantees of a student placement. The one is international focus. By selecting an international focus track, the student is guaranteed an internship in one of 6 countries of choices. And what they're really saying is that they care more about the networking opportunities, the country-specific skills gain, and the opportunity to build experience in that specific country more than the career field itself. We selected these 6 countries because we were already based there with our sister company, CRCC Asia, and had robust placements. But on the flip side, we did offer career field focus. So that allowed the student to pick one of our 18 chosen and designated career fields and to be guaranteed a placement in that career field, but it then opened up placements to anywhere in the world. And while this wasn't expected data, what we found was that 16.5% of confirmed participants chose the international focus, where the rest actually picked career field. When we first created these focuses, we thought it'd be more of a 25-75 split, but we're surprised that more really focused on that career field. Even more so, of the career field students, 33% actually had no preference of location. They cared nowhere in the world where they were going to go. And really interestingly, although we'd need more data to unpack this, is that 74% of the international focused students were actually from the US specifically. Conversely, 80% of interns from the UK chose the UK as their preferred location, meaning the US, despite going virtual and having opportunities to potentially do domestic, still wanted that remote international experience, where the UK students actually wanted a remote domestic experience in light of COVID. Moving beyond student motivation, we of course do have the company motivation. And so looking at the top reasons for hiring a remote intern, we looked at identified tasks to be completed, COVID as an impact, building a talent pipeline, increasing brand awareness, CSR, and more. And the top reason is that identified task that needed to be completed, followed a lot by building a talent pipeline, which is a lot of companies really reflected on this summer when they had to cancel in-person internships and were coming against, how am I going to now get my young professionals in the door next year? On the flip side, which is really nice to see, the majority of companies did not choose hiring a remote intern because of COVID. They actually said that was not one of their top reasons, and that they were looking more at that talent pipeline and task. Unpacking it a little bit more, when we asked supervisors and host companies their outcome of the virtual internship, we did find that 91% of host companies agree that hiring a virtual intern allows them to make a contribution to education or youth development, really driving that force of why am I hosting an intern? As well as 80% agree that remote interns provide an opportunity to exchange cultural knowledge. They like that international factor of a remote internship in many cases. The good news for us is that 22% of host companies, only 22% of host companies, actually agree that they are able to hire remote interns without our help or assistance. What that really needs to be unpacked a little bit more is why. This could be that they don't know how to access the international talent pipelines that we access through our universities. On the flip side, it could also be that they don't have the ability to give the same robust support that a university student encountering remote work for the first time may need, with 78% really focusing on that they need additional support in order to engage and hire remote interns. The other good news, though, is that 72% of host companies disagree that supervising a remote intern takes more time than in person. They can see that there's really good benefits to both, but that the time benefit and the time requirement is going to be comparable for in-person and remote. So looking past the motivations, what we can come with is student outcomes. And so the first that we really look at is the NACE 8 career readiness skills. These are embedded in everything we do. We quote it daily, I talk about it all the time. And the four main things that we really definitely embedded in is our online career curriculum, our weekly Google Hangouts where the students can come and join a guided discussion, our coaching calls where we unpack the skills gained and how they can apply it to future career pathways, as well as our assigned project placement plan, or for lack of a better word, job description that the students are given that really talks them through what work they're expected to do at their assigned host company. In this, knowing that career readiness skills are so important, our assessments of the student are given at the pre, mid, and post, and all aligned to the career readiness. So we ask 3 questions per competency, and we really kind of make sure we unpack that for the student, noting what would this look like and giving examples to each and every question we ask, and then having the student rank it on a never to always extent. This is mirrored in the supervisor evaluation so we can see comparability. Well, we do have a lot of data to unpack the individual student gain. What I am looking at bigger is just in the student post-assessment, on average, this is what students noted as their ranking or self-assessment of these NACE career readiness competencies. They were highly competent in global intercultural fluency, professionalism and work ethic, as well as team and work and collaboration. What's always interesting to see is what the companies say, which they ranked a little less. So what you can see previously is you didn't have a lot of yellow, a lot of purple, a lot of those some extent moderate or little, or even never. They really did edge up when you ask the supervisor evaluation. Even so that you can actually see the teal outline is where the students rank themselves, and the chart behind it is where the supervisors. And so you can see a lot of students think they have a lot more global and intercultural fluency than the supervisor reflects upon, as well as the same with leadership as well and teamwork. The only thing that they truly see eye to eye on is that digital technology piece, which is so crucial to remote work. When also looking at outcomes, the end-all be-all program goal is that we want a dynamic labor market that facilitates cultural exchange, but also strengthens the professional development of any participant, with the outcome and the final end goal that they are able to get post-graduation employment successfully, quickly, and well. And so what we really look at there is what post-program employment do they have? And in the short term, we look at, do they feel more confident in obtaining a future full-time work? We look at remote work skills and do they have increased ability to work remotely? And we also look at remote work interest. Are they interested in taking this forward after this internship or after graduation? These outcomes are what we can reflect on now because the program just ended, but we do also have an alumni survey that gets sent to the students every 6 months post-program. Our current iteration for our in-person internships has about a 23% response rate. And what we're really looking there is, are the students employed? Where are they employed? And what is their salary? And does it actually meet the market salary of traditional graduates? So looking at these outcomes and unpacking it, we do have post-program employment, and 79.25% of students agree that they are now more confident in obtaining future employment after completing a remote work experience with virtual internships. Furthermore, 15% of interns are actually reporting receiving a job offer from their current host company, either to continue on a contract or full-time basis with them. When it comes to remote work skills, 88.68% agree that the remote work skills increased, which is great because this would be the biggest downer if it wasn't having a strong confidence, as this is such the crux of the program, the experience, and the outcomes. And finally, with remote work interest, 56.64% agree that they have increased interest in working remotely. Now, this is an interesting one because it's really not about a competency. It could be about a preference. What we don't know here is, one, how many students actually had participated in an in-person internship prior to doing a remote internship and can really compare and contrast the benefits. We all know that when we're doing in-person internships, one of the biggest complaints we get from a student is, why is my commute so long? Had they never experienced that commute, they might be kind of building up that in-person remote work more than in-person remote over remote and have this be a lower number. Also, if I asked all 116 of you, hey, what are your feelings about remote work? I think that it would also be very, very split, with some really embracing and loving the opportunity from working from home, and others just inching to go back to their office and to really experience that collaboration and in-person support. We also looked at skills gain. And so this is an open-ended question that we ask the students. So what is one skill or area you improved after completing the virtual internship? In reviewing all the outcomes, the two most common answers that were articulated was time management and communication. The great thing about this is we also have some quotes, like, my communication skills were greatly improved, especially in writing. Also, my critical thinking, problem-solving skills improved. Another student wrote, it's leadership skills. What I think is really great about this is that These outcomes were articulated in the end of program report, which does not have the 8 NACE competencies listed. It means that the students are actually coming up with these skills on their own and being able to identify and reflect on them in this written piece without getting prompted on which skills are present. We also do have program highlights. So we ask students what was the best part of the internship. And I think a lot of students note that the real idea of how companies operate, the people that they worked with, showing that kind of intercultural, that fluency and that connectivity, cross-cultural communication, as well as getting used to working remotely was the biggest takeaway. I do have 2 students who articulated also their highlights, and I will share it just real quick.
Overall, it was a really great experience. I honestly learned so much, and I know that not only because of coronavirus, but just because of that summer hiatus that most people tend to fall into, if it had not been for this program and that internship, I would not have had a very productive summer at all. And I would have to say that the highlight of my virtual experience was definitely when I first accomplished my coding task of doing the crawler. When I built it successfully for my first website, I felt immensely proud of myself because not only was this a new field that I had never really attempted before, I was also doing it remotely, which I think makes it very difficult for you to adjust into the work environment and even just figure things out as to being able to accomplish your tasks and etc. So I felt very proud when I was able to I guess achieve on the technical side of things, as well as when my supervisors told me that they felt like the work I had done for them was very meaningful, which I think is really the great thing about this experience, is that not only are you able to still remain active, even virtually, you're still able to develop a really good bond with your supervisors and do some networking, which I think is also very essential.
A highlight of my virtual internship program was towards the end of the program, after I had completed all of my CPD courses, all my work was done, had a chance to get back and meet with my supervisor, and he also brought on one of the head doctors at Ascroft Medical, and they both thanked me for my time, and that was really cool to get some gratification from completing my work, and all of the efforts that I put into it really got that payback. And my supervisor congratulated me on completing my internship and even offered me a chance to come back and be a CPD developer in a paid position. So that was really cool to be able to get a job opportunity out of the work that I did through this internship.
So beyond the program outcomes and the skills articulations that we're still really getting a lot more data from, we do have just some general successes that we can say from running this program at such a large scale. So one is that personalized support. While you build scale, sometimes you might diminish that one-on-one time. And we really tried hard not to do that and to really put in full stops and more that would never really take away that personalization. And that really allowed us to have this program experience manager be an extra guide through remote work, which was really necessary for these students to navigate the challenges. We also found that the coaching calls were above and beyond one of the biggest highlights a lot of the students noted, because it was what they reflect a lot is the first time they had ever been just given a chance to nonstop talk about themselves and their future career pathways, which was really great to see. And we found that students who complete the coaching calls are usually more happy with the experience, as well as in general just are able to note their skills even clearer. And finally, we have this feedback loop. So every week we do ask the students to reflect on their experience and let us know what's happening. And that really allows us to see what is happening across the globe in all these different countries, understand the nuances happening there, and identify any issues, isolate, and intervene very quickly. The surprise successes, just to really quickly throw out, is that one is Google Hangouts. Every Tuesday, we offer a 1-hour discussion, and we usually frame this around one of the 8 NACE competencies, including new articles and more. And when I was promoting this program back in April to everybody who had kind of needed to pivot because of COVID, a lot of questions I got from universities was like, well, why? No student's going to show up. And then I thought, uh-oh, what have I done? I've created a program component that no one's going to show up to. But actually, we have really strong engagement in these discussions. It's great because students can reflect back on it. It's always there. It's always present for them. And it really continues to articulate those career readiness competencies. The other success is the Global Employability Expert Series. Much like the Google Hangouts, when it comes to webinars prior to COVID, attendance rates were quite low, and we were always nervous, is the work and the time and the commitment worth it? And what we found is that every other week, we have about 65 to 100 students attend our webinars, as well as vastly more students watch it on YouTube. And we've now built a library of support that we can really navigate the students to and direct them to should there be an issue. On the flip side of successes, of course, we do have challenges, and I'm not going to ignore that. One is this water cooler culture, or this concept that by working remotely, you are never going to get in the elevator by accident with the CEO and have that opportunity. You're not going to strike up conversations with your coworkers as naturally as you potentially would in the office. And that is really reflected in 52.18% of the students agree that they were integrated into their company just as they would have if they weren't working in person. So every other student thinks that they weren't integrated as much. Once again, we don't have the data of have they completed a in-person internship previously, and we would need to pull that out to really unpack the understanding of this. But what we have found with water cooler culture is, one, the focus of creating and supporting integration really comes on the host company side. We need to work to train the host company, to engage the host company, to give them ideas on how to integrate the student, because it doesn't come naturally. We are all learning about remote work now, and previously some had become experts of remote work prior to COVID, and we need those experts to continue to be present and really engage and support these students, because that is where they're going to get integrated and network and more, so that the students like Brandy Wan from UPenn, who noted that she had network opportunities, won't be an isolated case, it'll be a bigger case. We also, on the flip side, do have to work with students to really support their understanding of workplace culture and how to see it virtually. And we put a big emphasis on informational interviews, which has been quite successful, where students are really able to come back to us and go, I was able to network with my team and understand better because I effectively implemented the request for informational interviews. The photo here is actually one of our interns who got a welcome packet from their host company sent across the world, and he's repping a hoodie. He got a couple other things too, and this is one way that companies and students are really getting off on the right foot with the culture, integration, and more, and it's a really simple and welcoming way. We also have the challenge of remote work is, how do you identify issues if you are not seeing the student each and every day? As well as, how do we have the speed of solutions? When you're working with an in-person internship, if something's not going right, you still have opportunity to really quickly, you still have the opportunity to get that water cooler culture. You have the opportunity to deal with workplace culture, the commute, and more. And even if work isn't happening at the speed you'd like, you still are so present that your supervisor is every day engaging and supporting and identifying issues. Now, if you are remote, we can't identify issues as quickly as possible, nor can we fix it as quick as possible if we can't identify it. And so that's really where our checkpoints have come in our feedback loop. We have edited it over the whole course of the summer, and now this is what we ask students each and every week to submit along with their feedback form of reflection of their work and the supervisor's improvements, so that we can now really target, isolate, and contain any issues of communication and more with the student, and make sure that all students are present and able to say, hey, I need help, whether we can see them or not. The other challenges, I think, come from student advice. So if a student gives an advice to a current student, it means that they had to overcome this challenge themselves. And so to wrap up this presentation, I did want to kind of discuss what students advise other students to know when doing a virtual internship. So I'll play a short video. Oh, I'd love to play a short video.
I think in terms of advice for anyone out there that plans to do a virtual internship in the future, I would definitely try to create structure for yourself, because you have a lot more freedom and flexibility. You also can easily get caught up and procrastinate on your work or just not be as productive as you would like because you are at home. You're not going to be in a typical workplace environment with other workers by your side, kind of helping you get in that productive zone.
The final question is, what advice would I give someone who's just starting off in the internship? And I just say that just fully immerse yourself in it, just fully embrace the virtual aspect of it. It's different from what most people have ever done before, I imagine, but it's something new, and it's probably something that we'll be doing more of in the future.
A piece of advice that I would give a future intern would be manage your time management. Try not to do everything in one day. It's not a sprint, it is a marathon. Space your time out through the time that you are working, because during a virtual internship, you're not going to have a supervisor looking over your shoulder 24/7. You're going to have to manage your time properly to make sure that you are getting the task done within the time frame and within the week that you're giving that work.
So we also asked students to give advice in written feedback as well as in testimonials. And so when students were given advice, 14% noted being proactive, reaching out first, really engaging with your supervisor. 8% noted something about overcoming nerves or just being bold, is what one student noted, about how you really need to be brave and really take the next step. And then, of course, 37% mentioned time management, as well as 37% mentioned communication. I think one student's advice was really this: time management, time management, time management. Knowing these advices does show that these are the areas of support that the students find that they need most in remote internships. They need that really understanding of initiative and proactiveness and how to really overcome those fears, as well as they need tools and exposure to time management and communication, as working remotely is really tricky in that. And that is where we've built up support, and through these evaluations have identified need to build up more support. So as I am over time, I do want to just wrap it up with kind of looking at the next steps. Virtual internships, we really can articulate, are here to stay. It's not a COVID Band-Aid. We were here prior, we will be here after. And through this scale, we're hoping to continue and continue our growth, and year on year continue to grow even bigger and better than 1,015 students in the summer. Through that, we want to continue to refine company support and integration to increase the workplace culture, increase that understanding of networking, and more for the students' outcome, and to never really replace water cooler culture, because it is a remote internship after all, and we'll never have that, but to implement ways to find it water cooler culture wherever we can virtually. We also want to focus on student skills gain and articulation through those coaching calls and curriculum. We want to continue to build a portfolio of online resources through our YouTube channel, our curriculum, and website. And we want to make sure that these students are able to transfer their in-person, their remote work to in-person or permanent work. Real quick, we do have 2 more webinars in this section. We have the present next week on September 2nd, and then we'll look to the future and debate kind of how remote work may or may not be here to stay on September 9th. I thank you all so much for joining. I won't kick anybody out. If you guys have questions or would like to open up the dialogue, I am happy to answer anything that I possibly can. But I thank you all so much for joining. Within 24 hours, I will send you all a report that really unpacks a little bit more of the data that was just highlighted here. And feel free to reach out to me directly or to Virtual Internships at any point for more information about the program, the data, the outcomes, and more. So with that, I'll let Kelen and Jess support me in answering some of these questions.
All right, hi Jillian. So our first question is about how we assess the global fluency skill. And the asker noted how it was rated highest by students as a benefit of their virtual internship. So they're asking how we specifically define these terms, because without definition, they may be simple emotional attributes with little lasting substance.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So just as noted prior, RNA's assessments are 3 questions per competency. The definition of the global fluency is the exact definition that is from the NACE resource. So we did not redefine it. We just unpacked that definition into 3 competencies, looking at a student's assessed ability to work with people from different backgrounds, cultures, and religions, to navigate different communication styles and more. And so those 3 questions unpack that. And so while it's not perfect, you're right. If you're from study abroad, you could then now throw at me 5 different other ways to pack intercultural fluency and more. This is one piece of the big puzzle of virtual internships. And so we have just really aligned it to the NACE competency definition, as well as input it into our general assessment of all 8 career readiness competencies, and not just focused on that one.
Hi, Jillian. Thank you so much for answering that question. Our next question is about workplace culture and how do we support students' understanding of workplace culture for a remote internship?
Yeah, that's a great question. First, it's defining it. It's interestingly enough that a lot of students don't really know that one of the things they might like about a company is that culture. And one of those things that they need to discover of an internship is culture. And so we start talking about that in the prior to them starting in the orientation video, as well as in a lot of emails, giving them different resources on how can you understand the culture, how can you identify it, and how can you integrate into it, giving them a bit of stepping stones. We then, in the coaching calls, also discuss this because it is such an imperative thing when you're looking at how did this experience impact your future career pathway. We really want to talk about the skills they got, but also what did they like about the experience? What tasks did they get? And what are they really benefiting from? As the coaching call is at the midpoint and end, that midpoint is really looking at what have they done in the past first half of the internship, but how can they apply it to their second? So it's only looking at anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks in the future. And so that's really where they can talk about, did you actually understand the culture? Are you understanding it, or can we take more steps? And finally, what we try to do really hard is to get the host company to understand culture and to be the driver of that, to making sure that the students are engaged in their fun global chats, that they are invited to meetings that they might not be directly working on, but can really engage with. That feedback is given virtually over Zoom and not just in an email, to really get more of those cultural intonations and more.
All right, and our next question is asking about whether or not we've seen any data yet showing an increase in non-traditional student participants, such as those who are currently working full-time, those with kids, students of color, from DACA, etc.
So diversity and accessibility is why we started virtual internships in 2018. We really noted that prior to COVID, which stopped the world from traveling, there were a lot of barriers for individual students to be able to complete international work experiences or just work experiences in larger cities. And that included family culture, family barriers, financials, understanding of these opportunities, geographic locations, and more. And while we have always seen that are comparable to our in-person internships, this did increase diversity. We didn't ask the students the right questions to get to the point that we could actually give a profile of the diversity of our programming. We really kept it high level and more on the professional asks than the individual personal asks, and it's something that we do need to reflect upon and adapt for the future so that we can actually note the diversity of our program, of our participants, and the different trends thereof.
Okay, great. And our next question asks how we managed to provide such personalized support for over 1,000 interns.
How to do it? It's with really, really dynamic staff. We were really lucky with COVID happening that we were able to transfer a lot of the staff who were really trained in-person internships from our CRCCH, our sister company, to virtual internships in a very quick amount of time so that we already had trained, ready staff. We also had really engaged staff because we were able to retain them all through COVID. That individualizing is really creating multiple touch points and to be ever present in the students' experience so that when there is an issue, they will reach out and build that rapport. Some things can't be of scale. So for example, we don't call each student individually at the first day of their internship to say, hey, how's it going? But we did create and welcome a series of emails over 15 days that they'll get daily that they could respond to with any questions. These emails also include short videos and introducing them to their program experience manager so they can put a name to the face, they can understand the personality more and feel more comfortable reaching out. We also made sure that no one student was only supported by one person, giving multiple levels through the university partnership manager who deals with universities and the student thereof, the program experience manager, the internship coach, the supervisor, and our ad hoc in-person events. With every program, you'll find that the student range of what they need really varies as well. There are some students who will be like, what? No, I was perfectly fine engaging every day with my supervisor. I didn't really want to partake in the Google Hangouts or the webinars, nor did I need to reach out to my program experience manager other than the weekly feedback loop to say, hey, doing well, everything's good. On the flip side, you'll have a student who really needs that touch point. And so when you ask our program experience managers what the breakdown is, they could say that one student took 10 hours through coaching, support, and more to deal with a project that they were a little nervous about, whereas another student took 0 hours that week. And that's really how we can build scale, because not all students are one size fits all. So we really just need to make sure that we have the right staff as well as the right ratio of students to staff to really support in this remote work experience.
And for the next question, we have you worked with a group of students working as a cohort at one virtual site, and have you done any group placements?
Excellent question, and I probably should have really unpacked that a lot more in the presentation. Our placements are a mix of individualized, one-on-one at the host company, as well as group placements. When we're looking at a group placement, we usually have 3 to 4 students working together. We've had universities who have really worked in line with us to create a course and then articulate who is the leader of what project each week, and then it's rotating across the 4. Or in other cases, we've really let the teamwork and the collaboration happen naturally with the 4 students assigned to the supervisor working on different projects together. It's a mixed bag, right? As soon as you have teams, you have the risk that the team isn't working. And so now are you dealing with the company and student engagement dynamic, or are you working with the student and team engagement dynamic if there's an issue? But we found that many students actually in their feedback note that they'd wish they had another intern working at the company with them, just because they would have had one more person to ping ideas off, to ask for support and more. And so we do look at, is a host company is able to articulate a need for additional tasks, and really unable to unpack a strong placement plan that can meet the needs of 2 20 to 30 hour week internships and not just one, we'll place the students together just so that they have one more need of support.
Okay, great. And we do have one more question, and this is about if we have any feedback, how our partner institutions, so how universities feel about these experiences, and asking if their students receive credit.
Yeah, of course. So when it comes to the program end date, the program ends, the student's done with an internship, but they're not really done with our support. The coaching call will happen anytime from 1 to 3 weeks after. We'll get the supervisor evaluation then, and then we will get the end of program evaluation about 2 to 4 weeks after. After that, we can then present to the university, this is what we know, these are our outcomes. How did you feel about the experience? What is happening there? And so that outcome will really come in September from this summer program. And so we don't have data on that. We will be able to reflect on that in the future, and we definitely capture it just so we can know, A, how can we monitor and evaluate our program and make it better for all 3 parties, and B, to really be able to report and reflect to the university what they're thinking, how they're feeling, and how that works with the other universities that are engaged in partnership.
All right, Jillian, I think those are all the questions that we have at the moment.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all for hanging with me 20 minutes longer than my 30-minute webinar. I do promise more details will be shared in the report, which has a lot more numbers attached, those response rates that I just kind of hurried off, but I will have diligently written in the report, and more within the next 24 hours. I really appreciate all of you, and please do reach out should you have any more questions or even ideas of why didn't you capture this data, because if we didn't capture it now, it doesn't mean that we cannot capture it in the future, and look to this as really good information to guide us moving forward.